deep dive into their Twitter feeds and their texts and everything else, Instagram, Facebook. These kids communicate wildly, furiously with each other. And it turns out that Diamond was using Trayvon to make her boyfriend jealous, her real boyfriend jealous, who was an older guy. And she didn't want, once this happened, the world to know that she had been hanging out with Trayvon. And so she kept quiet about it. The Trayvon friends and family forced her out. She does an interview with ABC's Matt Gutman. She does an interview with a phone interview. She won't be seen in public with Benjamin Crump, the utterly corrupt attorney who represents the Martin family. Crump makes a big deal out of it. He demands an arrest. Now we have this girl who's saying what Crump wants her to say, mainly that Zimmerman was stalking and profiling Trayvon Martin, this little boy, because he was carrying the Skittles and the iced tea because he was a racist and whatnot. And that led to the state of Florida coming to Miami to interview Diamond Eugene. On April 2nd, 2012, now we're 5 or 6 weeks after the incident, they come to the house where Diamond Eugene lives and she's not there. So they're sent to another house. And when they answer the door, this 300-pound big, you've seen Rachel Jontel is her name. Sure. She's mentally challenged, 300-pound that girl comes out and says, I'm Diamond Eugene. I'm Trayvon's girlfriend, right? Now, the prosecutors should have seen right away that this was a scam, but they didn't. They took her at her word. She repeated more or less what Crump had said. They put that into the affidavit of arrest, and they arrested George Zimmerman. They ruined his life right there. And then that led to the trial. You had a year of misinformation, disinformation from the media. So when they come to the trial, the idiots who've been following the major media thought that Zimmerman was going to be convicted. And yet the evidence was overwhelming that he was innocent. And the police knew that the night of the shooting. And they knew he had done exactly what a neighborhood watch captain should do. And the rest is history. And then after he's acquitted, Black Lives Matter forms as a direct response. They take their show on the road to Ferguson a year later in summer 2014. There, they create this anti-police furor throughout America that causes the police to withdraw from neighborhoods, the gangs to move in. And in 2 years, the crime rate spiked, the murder rate spiked by 3,000 deaths just from 2014 to 2016.
Let me ask you this. Because it's fascinating. Because Diamond Eugene, there's a handwritten statement that was given to George Zimmerman, to Trayvon Martin's mother, and placed in her. She kept it in her Bible. There's a handwritten statement that's signed by the name. It's not even a signature; it's a printed signature. Diamond Eugene, that is somehow entered into evidence by a person, a witness, a physical witness with a different name. Who says that's my statement? I've never seen anything like that before in my life.
No, and at the trial, Rachel Jontel has to claim that Diamond Eugene is her nickname, right?
Right.
And that she signed it. Now, she admitted because she couldn't even read it. It was in cursive. She couldn't read it. Right. But she said she signed it. And her signature is, and as Joel proves, he hires the best handwriting experts in the country, And her signature doesn't even come close to matching, nor does her voice match the voice of the girl on the telephone, the real girl, Diamond Eugene. Everything about it was fraudulent.
Yeah, it's funny.
The prosecutors had no excuse for not seeing through this.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember watching Jontel as a witness and thinking, how could this good-looking kid, how could this be his girlfriend? She has no personality. She has nothing going for her. I had assumed that he was buying drugs from her because, he was using that lean, the codeine and stuff, So I figured maybe yeah, that's what my assumption was at the time. But you're right. When you see this Joel Gilbert, the work he's done on this is incredible. My question for you, though, is back to Diamond Eugene. What have you spoken to her after all this?
I have not. Joel has,
Joel met her during the film, but I asked him if he's spoken to her after he did that little the filming that was portrayed in the film. He says he hasn't spoken to her since. Do you know differently?
She's gone quiet. I mean, she withdrew her Twitter account and stuff. What's interesting about Diamond Eugene is she comes from this Haitian American subculture in Miami, which is thoroughly criminal. At least her circle is. They're totally into identity theft and stuff like that. Yeah. And so switching names with her half sister was not a big deal. But then she goes on, Diamond Eugene goes on to go to college. She graduates from Florida State with a degree in criminal justice. I think what was interesting about Diamond Eugene and why in the book, Joel portrays her pretty positively because she refused to perjure herself officially. She refused to go along with Crump and to sit for a deposition and lie to these prosecutors.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. There is a handwritten statement that's purportedly her statement. How do we know that she didn't actually hear these things that she said she heard on the phone with Zimmerman, with Trayvon Martin?
Because they defy all known facts. I mean, the fact is that George Zimmerman was exactly where he said he was going to be, which is about 200 feet from the apartment where Trayvon Martin had run to, It wasn't like Zimmerman didn't stalk him at all. He wasn't even close to him. I mean, he was by his car, so Zimmerman, what happened is Martin circled back and attacked him. There's no way that he could have been stalking him because we know where the incident took place.
And we know from the work by Joel Gilbert, and he documents Trayvon's friends and family calling up the real Diamond Eugene, that they were putting pressure on her to make this statement.
Yeah, I mean, they pressured her from the beginning. And she, to her credit, she buckled a little bit, but then she resisted when it came down to perjury, Now,
since this film's come out and since Zimmerman's announced in the lawsuit, no one's heard from this woman, Diamond Eugene.
No, not formally. She through an attorney.
Okay. But
the attorney was joined, if not mistaken, she was using the same attorney as either the Martin family or Rachel Jeantel. And what they're saying is, you're dishonoring the family again, you're causing more pain. But they're not saying, no, this is nonsense,
Yeah, I don't know how they could. Because Mr. Gilbert did an excellent job documenting this.
There's no doubt about what he accomplished. And Benjamin Crump, the other day, decided not to countersue. He said, "Oh no, I'm above that. I'm not going to countersue. That's what they want." No, he can't countersue because he's guilty of sin. If the truth comes out, he will be disbarred. I mean, what he did is outrageous, and it cost inevitably, indirectly, thousands of black lives.
Well, the thing is, Crump couldn't countersue anyway because he's going to be a witness now in this.
Yeah.
Now, what about Rachel Jeantel? Has she made a statement about this?
Only through an attorney and only, sort of distantly and, saying, the harm that's being re-inflicted on the Martin family, blah, 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 blah,
Now, what about
a general kind of denial, a non-denial denial,
What about this kid that was the real Diamond Eugene's boyfriend, the one who was in the mix? Has anybody spoken to him?
No, but they broke up not too long after. He was an innocent. He was a good kid who was working a couple jobs. Diamond was a real player, at 16. And she's pretty good looking. I mean, if you saw her, you'd understand why Trayvon was talking to her for 5 hours a day. But she and Jeff, his name was Jeff, I won't give his last name out here, but they broke up about a year after the incident. He was, there's an element of poignancy in the text between them, and the tweets, essentially.
I was thinking he would be like if I was working this case, he would be one of the first people I would contact because he could corroborate that they were having problems over her texting Trayvon Martin. He would definitely know by now.
No, he didn't know. No, but that's just it.
But by now he would
have to know.
Yeah, but by now he would have to know.
Oh, but certainly it came. He'd come out by now. Yeah, but at the time he didn't know, and that's why Diamond had to keep a low profile.
Yeah. It's just fascinating. People do have to check out this video. It's very painstakingly documented. Now, who was it? Because I guess it had to be either you or Joel who called up George Zimmerman and said, "Hey, man, wait till you see what we got for you." Okay, how did that go down?
Well, Joel was in more immediate contact once they get started, but I'd hear from George with communication. It really helped him a lot, this whole process, because he had been, I have reason to go to Florida periodically, and I have lunch with George and his family, every now and then, and he can't hold a job, he can't have a fixed address. His love life is a disaster because who wants to go out with George Zimmerman? You're putting a crosshair on your head. And not just figuratively. In 2015, a guy took a shot at Zimmerman, missed by inches.
Yeah.
The guy serving 20 years in prison. It didn't even barely made the news, you know?
Yeah.
Then Jay-Z comes out with this utterly inflammatory 6-part series in 2018 that, again, just repeats all the media lies over and over again. And then you look at the Twitter feeds and like, oh, how come, even Jay-Z himself says, how come no one's taken out this guy or something quite like that, How is he allowed to walk around the streets of Florida? Where are my brothers? What are you guys doing,
Yeah, but Jack, can you blame the average person who just heard that edited 311 tape and thinks that George Zimmerman got out of his car and chased down a kid? You know what I mean? Can you blame the average person that hears that over and over and over again, and that's what they believe?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll just give you how thoroughly the disinformation went. I took a concealed carry course just this weekend.
Yeah.
And I was talking to my instructor afterward during a break because it was a racially mixed class, and I wasn't going to bring this case up, even though it's the perfect self-defense case. We were talking about the law. And I said to him, hey, if you ever want to talk about this case, I can, give you some detail. He goes, oh, yeah, from what I understand, Zimmerman did everything wrong. You guys should never I said, no, I said, even a concealed carry guy is utterly misinformed about what happened, And when I started saying to him, no, I think, there's been a lot of misinformation out there about what Zimmerman did and what he should have done. And he goes, that's not what I hear. Well, yeah, no, it's not what you hear. It's just it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame. Everybody's dug in on this along racial lines, and especially and even some of the people who called police that night thought that these were two black guys. They thought Zimmerman was a black guy too.
Right? They didn't know, and then what happened though after the fact is when they start showing this picture of the 12-year-old Trayvon Martin.
Yeah. Then
the witnesses decided that the voice they heard yelling and screaming was a little boy's voice, But it wasn't. It was George Zimmerman. It was obvious, and obvious to the cops. It was obvious to the real eyewitness who was right there, who heard it,
Yeah.
And Zimmerman got up, right after the shooting, and the police were there a minute later because he'd already called them, And he says to him, I was screaming for help, 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 help. Well, he didn't know this was going to be picked up on a 9/11 call. One of the 9/11 calls picks up 40 seconds of someone yelling for help. And then the media and the Martin family decided it was Trayvon who was calling for help. But why was he calling for help? He's on top of the guy pounding,
Yeah. Another thing, too, people who make the claim about, well, why was he suspicious? Why was he calling the police? Other people who heard the scuffling and the footsteps out in front of their condo called police and said, hey, it's pouring rain out there. No one in their right mind would be out there.
That's right. And that's what caused Zimmerman to be suspicious. By the way, this gated community in which he lived was a victim of the Florida real estate bust. Mm-hmm. And a quarter of the units were vacant. A quarter of the units were Section 8. There was a gate, but there was no wall on the north side. There were pit bulls running wild. There had been numerous home invasions and break-ins. This was no one's idea of a gated community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the first reports, was a neighborhood watch captain shoots down this young unarmed man, and everyone had a picture in their head of a 50-year-old white guy. What I mean?
Yeah. And his name is Zimmerman,
Oh, yeah.
I once had lunch with George and his parents, and I said to them, I said to George, I said, if, he was named after his uncle Jorge, his mother's brother. I said, if they had named you Jorge and not George, no one would have ever heard about you outside of Sanford, Florida. And he goes, you're absolutely right. And then the mother turns to the father and says, I told you we should have called him Jorge.
Now, from your examination of this case, was the first person to promote this story Jane Velez Mitchell?
Was it who?
Jane Velez Mitchell from HLN, because I can remember her starting her show holding up a can of Skittles and holding up an iced tea with a hood on her head and said there was a boy killed because of this. And
she was among the first. What happened is that right away they hired a white PR guy named Ryan Jullison to team Trayvon, Benjamin Crump and him. Crump had been down this road before. And within 3 days, they had gotten the parents who were separated, long separated, 15 years. Now they're back, loving couple again, onto ABC's Good Morning America. That was the first major TV appearance. HLN ran with it, though, after that.
Okay.
They could beat it to death,
Okay. And now, the Zimmerman family, have they received any kind of settlements, wrongful death settlements from anyone anywhere?
Yeah, sure. And that was part of the reason for the arrest, is that without